The letter she never sent. The Annabel Rook case. In the early hours of June 17, 2025, residents of a quiet street in Stoke Newington, North London, were awakened by a powerful explosion. Windows shook. Neighbours rushed outside. Smoke and flames poured from a house on Dumont Road. At first, many believed they were witnessing a tragic gas explosion. But within hours, investigators would discover something far more disturbing. Inside the damaged property, firefighters found the body of 46-year-old Annabel Rook, a respected charity founder, a devoted mother, a woman known for helping vulnerable people. The man found alive at the scene was her partner of 10 years, Clifton George. What initially appeared to be a devastating accident would soon become one of the most shocking murder cases to reach a London courtroom. This is the story of Annabel Rook, a woman who spent years helping others while quietly struggling with problems inside her own home, and a story that raises difficult questions about the warning signs that can remain hidden until it is too late. Annabel Rook was not someone who sought attention. Friends described her as compassionate, intelligent, and deeply committed to improving the lives of others. She co-founded MamaSuze, a charity focused on supporting women, families, and vulnerable communities. Those who worked alongside her remembered someone who always put other people first. She was also a dedicated mother to 2 sons. Family members spoke of her warmth, her generosity, and her determination to create opportunities for others. To many people, Annabel appeared to have built a meaningful and successful life. But behind the scenes, her relationship with Clifton George was becoming increasingly strained. George worked as an electrician and had been involved in major infrastructure projects across London. The couple had been together for around a decade. From the outside, they appeared to be living an ordinary life, yet evidence later presented in court suggested a very different reality. According to family members, Annabel had become increasingly concerned about George's temper. Her father, retired Judge Peter Rook, later recalled conversations that would take on heartbreaking significance after her death. Annabel told him that living with George felt like walking on eggshells. She described an atmosphere where arguments could develop unexpectedly, and where she often found herself trying to avoid conflict. Over time, she began discussing the possibility of ending the relationship. Those closest to her believed she had reached a point where she wanted a different future. Investigators would later uncover evidence supporting that conclusion. Among the most important discoveries was a draft letter found on Annabel's laptop. It was never sent, but it revealed her state of mind in the weeks before her death. In the document, she wrote about unhappiness within the relationship and her belief that things could no longer continue as they were. She described repeated conflict and emotional exhaustion. The letter painted the picture of someone who had spent a long time trying to make things work, but had finally accepted that the relationship was coming to an end. Investigators also discovered personal notes and reflections. Some were written during moments when she appeared to be seeking distance from arguments inside the home. Together, these writings provided a rare and deeply personal insight into her thoughts. For prosecutors, they became crucial pieces of evidence, not because they explained exactly what happened on the final night, but because they showed the direction Annabel's life was taking. She was preparing to move forward. She was preparing to leave. Family members later revealed that Annabel had spoken openly about separation in the weeks before her death. Messages presented in court suggested she no longer believed the relationship could continue. Despite this, witnesses described her as someone who wanted the separation to happen peacefully. Evidence heard during the trial suggested she had even considered helping George financially as part of the process. According to reports, she planned to provide significant financial support to help him establish a new home after the breakup. That detail would become particularly important. It suggested that Annabel was not attempting to punish or destroy George's future. Instead, she appeared to be searching for a way to end the relationship with as little conflict as possible. Yet prosecutors argued that by June 2025, tensions had reached a critical point. On the evening before the explosion, the couple were together inside their home. Evidence presented during the trial indicated that an argument took place. What happened during the following hours became the focus of a detailed forensic investigation. When emergency services arrived after the explosion, Annabel was already dead. Experts later concluded that her death had occurred before the blast. That finding changed everything. If the explosion had happened after her death, then it could not explain what investigators had found inside the house. The case was no longer being treated as a tragic accident. It was now a homicide investigation. Detectives began the painstaking process of reconstructing the final hours. Forensic specialists examined the damage caused by the explosion. They analyzed the structure of the house. They studied fire patterns. They reviewed physical evidence recovered from the scene. At the same time, investigators worked to understand the history of the relationship. Friends, family members, and colleagues were interviewed. Messages were reviewed. Documents were examined. A clearer picture gradually emerged. The prosecution argued that the evidence showed a relationship that had been deteriorating for years, and a woman who had decided to leave. One particularly significant moment came from testimony regarding the aftermath of the incident. Emergency responders found George alive inside the property. The circumstances surrounding what he said and did afterward became part of the wider investigation that prosecutors would later present to the jury. As the case moved towards trial, attention focused not only on the events of that night, but also on the years leading up to it. The prosecution argued that understanding the relationship was essential to understanding the crime. The trial took place at Snaresbrook Crown Court. George denied murder. His defense argued that events had unfolded during a loss of control. The prosecution strongly challenged that explanation. Jurors heard about Annabel's draft letter. They heard about her private writings. They heard testimony from family members who described her fears and concerns. They learned about her plans to leave the relationship. The prosecution argued that these pieces of evidence formed a consistent narrative. A woman trying to build a future beyond an unhappy relationship. A woman taking practical steps towards separation. And a situation that ultimately ended in tragedy. Witnesses also described George's behavior and temperament. The court heard evidence concerning arguments and tensions within the relationship. Prosecutors argued that the overall picture supported their case. The jury spent approximately 2.5 hours considering the evidence. Then they returned with their verdict. Clifton George was found guilty of murder. People inside the courtroom reacted emotionally. Friends of Annabel wept. Family members listened quietly. For those who had known her, the verdict marked the end of a long and painful chapter. But it could not undo what had happened. Following the verdict, Annabel's father paid tribute to his daughter. He described her as an extraordinary woman, a loving mother, a devoted daughter, a loyal friend, someone who brought joy into the lives of countless people. Many who knew Annabel echoed those sentiments. The tragedy of the case extended beyond the loss of one life. It also affected her children, her family, her friends, and the many people whose lives she had touched through her charitable work. Today, the Annabel Rook case is remembered not simply because of the shocking circumstances surrounding it. It is remembered because it highlights the hidden realities that can exist behind closed doors. It raises questions about controlling behavior, emotional intimidation, and the difficulties many people face when trying to leave troubled relationships. Experts often point out that separation can be one of the most dangerous periods in an abusive relationship. The evidence presented during this case forced many people to confront that reality once again. For investigators, the case began with an explosion. For the public, it became a story about warning signs, choices, and consequences. But for those who loved Annabel, it remains something far more personal. The loss of a mother, a daughter, a friend, and a woman who spent much of her life helping others. Long after the headlines fade, that is how many people will remember Annabel Rook. Not for the way her life ended, but for the difference she made while she was here,